All right, we've got some serious stuff to talk about. We've got coronal mass ejections, X-ray flares of the X-class variety radio blackouts that will persist for days at the poles, and more. Check it out. Today we had some serious solar flaring activity, and that solar flaring activity was indeed associated with an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. There you can see it happening. I bet you probably want to see that again, right? So yeah, check it out. That is absolutely berserk solar activity right in the Earth-facing zone there. And we've already got relativistic particles. Check this out. There's the X-ray flux, and you can see this is just the one-day chart here. 2 M-class flares, followed by an X-class flare from sunspot 2887. And yeah, there's an M-class flare. There's another M-class flare. And then there's an X-class flare and a CME. And we're going to show you some more footage of that. Check this out. All right, so we've got a bunch of HelioViewer videos for you here to check out. Here's 335 angstroms. We picked this one because you can really see the waves in this spectrum. It looks like waves propagating along the surface of an object directly in the Earth-facing zone there. So you can see the way there are waves radiating out from the location of that flare there. And we took a very limited time frame here just to highlight the flare moments. There are 2 M classes and an X flare in there. I think 193 angstroms might actually be the best to show the waveform propagating across the surface of the sun. And once again, shout out to Robitaille. Check out those coronal holes there. Not a lot of 193 angstrom iron emissions up there. Here's ionized helium. And this is going to be the best to show you the filament that comes blasting out toward Earth. Some of the particles arrived in a very short period of time. We'd call them relativistic protons. They indeed showed up. We got to the greater than 10. What is that? I'm not used to the units. I think it's 10 mega electron volts for the proton flux. I will show you that in a minute. First, some closer close-ups here of 2 giant flares, and then an even more giant flare. M-class flares, folks, are a ridiculous amount of energy. So here's 94 angstroms. This actually takes 10 images per minute, and the channel's so bright, we got to wear shades. It's just berserk stuff. 94 angstroms, one of the best, along with 131 because of the number of frames it takes per minute. It takes 10 images per minute. While most of the other wavelengths, again, save for 131 angstroms, take only 2 images per minute. Here's 171 angstroms. Spectacular filamentary structures showing up there during those flaring moments. Here's a composite. This is one of my favorite composites, 304 and 171. 304 and 171, I think that is. And so here's the proton flux data. I'll zoom this into the one day instead. You can see we had this massive proton event. We're going to see extended radio blackout features here. We're even seeing some climbing of the levels here once again. So those showing up quite promptly there. And indeed, you can see how fast those particles showed up. Peak flux was around 1530, and the protons were already showing up. The fastest ones, certainly by 1625, there was more than a coherent signal there in the proton flux. So only about an hour, so that's about 1/8 the speed of light, folks. Those particles were traveling about 1/8 the speed of light. About 23,250 miles per second. So those are some legit relativistic particles indeed. We'll show you the sort of radio blackouts that have been caused by the flares, and now in this case, some absorption in the ionosphere by protons. By the way, this is ionized carbon. And it looks like a bunch of carbon being created before your very eyes there. All those white parts, those very bright portions, those are areas that are suddenly very high in carbon. Things that make you go, Here's the southern hemisphere in a composite. This one is 94 and 171 angstroms. How about a light show? Here comes the Aurora Borealis too, by the way. We can expect to see that in a couple days. So here's the radio blackouts that have been going on today. You can see a bunch of flares, and then kapow, South America especially, getting kaplastered. Half of the Atlantic Ocean, and about, 1/5 of the Pacific Ocean. The entire continent of South America would have had a high-frequency blackout there. I'm pretty sure I was hearing some of this stuff on the radio myself. And I was hearing some interference. I was hearing like Morse code in places where I wouldn't hear Morse code on the radio today. So yeah, there was a little bit of interference going on there. But here's the proton event. And that is a whole nother story. That's going to stay there for days probably. And if you want to see some insight into Earth's magnetic fields, well, there you go. As those protons are forced to spiral into field-aligned currents. Anyway, expect lots of auroras. Now, these sort of events can be fatal to people in spacecraft. They can be fatal to people in the military who are unable to do things like navigate and communicate around the poles. They're very unlikely to do any damage to you, although if you're doing something like a flight back from Europe especially, for example, because of where the jet stream is usually located, you'd fly over Greenland, you would get a massive, massive dose of radiation depending on when things arrive and what altitudes you're at, and probably down to what kind of aircraft you're in. People on the International Space Station, they have sort of rooms that they go into that are better radiation shielded than their regular portion of the ship. They usually are able to get themselves there. I'm sure they were hanging close with the amount of solar activity we've suddenly seen rising. So hopefully that's going well. Oh, and before I forget, we actually streamed this live to the Twitch channel today. So this was on the Twitch channel the whole time. I was out driving around doing things. I was like, hey, I better put out a video. So anyway, this was streamed live to Twitch. Our Twitch channel is twitch.tv/smAsho. Look for lots more content coming from us soon. Expect lots more content coming from us, period, in all locations. Once again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing our channel exists. We'll see you soon. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. smAsho, signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted. Naming news.